Hey guys, Grumpy Sound Guy here. And as promised, I had to kind of take a week off because I'm fighting a horrible chest cold. I still have the cough of death lingering around, but I've been on antibiotics long enough now to where I'm starting to feel quite a bit better. So I had promised to talk about in-ear monitors and kind of get into some of the specifics of that. So I guess the best place to start with that conversation is really, why should I go in-ear monitor? Okay, well, there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, you're going to get your own personalized mix every single time. Well, some may argue, well, JR, I get that in a wedge now, Yeah, but it's not the same because when you're listening to your mix in a wedge, you're listening to it in reference with the rest of the stage volume. When you're in ears, you're a little bit isolated, which, we'll talk about the isolation factor here in a minute, but you're a little bit isolated from stage volume, so you get some hearing protection, which is super huge in today's world. And now you get to better tailor exactly what you hear. If you're a lead singer and you're standing right in front of the drums in a, small to medium-sized venue, you know how the drums just plow you over, man, and just really kick your rear end while you're trying to sing. Well, when you're in ears, man, you can really dampen a lot of that. You can dampen a lot of that, at least by about 25, 30 dB of that stage volume. And now you're only hearing exactly what you want to hear. If you just want kick, snare, and hat, just so you can keep time. And then the other melodic instruments in the band, like, guitar, keyboard, acoustic, that sort of thing to keep you on track melodically. It gives you that, it totally gives you that. As a drummer, I'm a drummer myself. I love ears because you can get a full-on drum mix if you want it, and that's something, especially with a big fat kick, and that is something that you can't get with with a wedge, unless you're in an outdoor festival setting where they have a drum sub and a full range drum fill right at the drums. You're really not going to get a big fat kick. But if you got a pair of Alien Ear G16s or any kind of, in-ear bud that has got, 2 or 3 subs per ear, you're going to get a great kick in your mix. You're going to have a mix that sounds really close to what front of house sounds like. I always recommend bass players and drummers to spend the money on the better earbuds. Drummers kind of get a break with in-ears in the sense that they can use a wired in-ear setup that looks various different ways. You can use like a P1 Behringer little belt pack that costs like $30 to $50 and it has an XLR on one end, a volume knob on the other, and a headphone out, and that's it. You can latch it on your belt. Some guys will put it on their rack next to them or something like that, and use an extender for their earbuds, extending cable for their earbuds to kind of help them, get up to their head. And then have volume right there next to their hi-hat or whatever. And that's cheap. I've seen a lot of guys that are running tracks and click. They'll usually have like a little 4 or 6 channel mixer next to them. Sometimes they can just come right out of the headphone out of that mixer, and have a volume on that and be able to get into their ears that way. But you definitely want to have super high quality earbuds, all the low end guys, bass players, drummers, that sort of thing. That way you're getting plenty of sub in your ears. The rest of the band kind of gets a break on the bud side of the conversation because they can go with just like a triple driver full range thing, costs $300 or $400. The higher end buds I was talking about for the bass players and drummers, be prepared. You're going to spend $800 or $1,000, $1,200 on those buds. But they're going to last you a long time. They're going to be custom molded to your ears, so you'll get a good tight seal, and that sort of thing. You're going to get the hearing protection, and you're going to really be happy with the results you get. The big mistake I see guys making with in-ear monitors is they try to cheese out on it, and they give it a half-ass effort, that way, and it doesn't work out. You get what you pay for. If you buy a $250 or $300 Chinese in-ear unit and a pair of Linsole, $30, I think is what they are, $30 or $40 earbuds off of Amazon, well, then that's kind of what it's going to sound like. And if you're a bass player or a drummer, you're going to be very disappointed in that. If you can get away with it, hey, that's cool. If you're using that stuff and you're happy with it, more power to you. But, my clients tend to be, A-rated, regional cover bands, B nationals, stuff like that. And those guys require, something better, or if you're a dad band and everybody's got money in the band because you got a, lucrative career, you're a business owner, man, spend the money. You spend $1,000 on a nice Sennheiser, in-ear unit or high-end Shure in-ear unit, and then, spend $300 to $600 on a nice set of buds, Again, if you're a low-end guy, then spend the extra money on the extra subs and get more drivers in your buds. I like Alien ears. There's guys who talk smack about them. I know guys that are sponsored by them, never had issues with them. There's been some questions about their service. You can't please everybody all the time. I know guys that are using Alien and absolutely love them. And they're a little less expensive than, Ultimate Ears and some of the other, higher end, earbud manufacturers. But go with what your budget can afford. Go do what you can afford to do, and just understand that the money you spend is going to be directly reflected in the sound quality that you get. So make sure you keep that stuff in mind. That's just the 101 entry level, why I should be in in-ear monitors. Now, some of the problems that you run into in in-ear monitors, outside of the initial cost, because it is expensive, is, and I say expensive, but understand that, when you buy this, you'll easily get 10 years of service out of this stuff, So, it's not like you're spending this and then 3 years later they're obsolete. Now, I've got a buddy of mine's band who's using the same Sennheiser in-ear unit that they have been using, golly, I'm going to say 15 years. And the singer in that band has dropped her earbuds in the toilet 3 different times. 3 different times we pulled it apart, dried it out, put it back together. She's still using it to this day. And the last toilet incident, which happened probably, I'm going to say 5 years ago or more, 6 years ago, she's still using that same belt pack to this day. So when you spend the money, you do get quality equipment, just with everything else in life. And the stuff will last, But once you get over the sticker shock of the initial expense, then the biggest complaint I hear guys starting out with ears is, well, now I feel isolated from the stage. Now I feel like I'm in this, my own little world, and, that sort of thing. And they tend to want to pull one earbud out so they can still hear the room and get a mix. I never recommend that. And the reason why is, if you poke around the internet and listen to guys way smarter than me, they'll tell you that when you pull one earbud out, you lose that sealed isolation, and now you have to push the earbud that's in another 6 to 10 dB in order to hear yourself the same as if you had both buds in. So you're really skating on the line of blowing out your eardrum. And I've seen that happen. It's not pretty. It's not a good thing. I always recommend keeping both buds in and just trying to get used to the isolation. Or have your sound guy, your band engineer, put up a room mic, and mic the room. A lot of guys put a mic on stage that only runs into the ear system for a talkback mic. So if the singer wants to, vary from the set list, they go to that mic. That mic usually either has a foot switch that turns it on and off, or a switch on the mic that turns it on and off. And they say, hey, instead of playing the next song, we're going to go to this song, or hey, look at the, I've seen instances where I knew a touring guy who used to, like, during, solo sections, while guitars were playing solos and stuff, he'd be telling, jokes in the talkback mic, and the drummer and bass player and all the rhythm guys would be cracking up, and it would just be an absolute mess. But I've also seen situations where females would go to the talkback mic and say, there's a guy in the front row that's really creeping me out. Could everyone please keep an eye on him, as we continue to perform? So it definitely serves a purpose there. But I've seen some people turn that mic on and leave it on so that they can kind of feel like they hear the stage volume and that sort of thing. So there's some other ways around that. It's definitely a learning curve. It's definitely something that's not going to feel natural right out of the gate for most people. Some people just love it right out of the gate. Most people are like, man, it just, the other thing is a dry mix. Most of the bands that I'm working with now, they have their own mixer on stage to mix their ears, and they're using a split snake. My last video, I think was the last video, was about split snakes. Go back, refer to that, and you'll learn all about what split snakes are. And then that way, you run all your mics into the split snake. One tail goes to the band's mixer so they can mix their own ears. They're usually using a digital mixer, and everybody has the app pulled up on their phone or their tablet at their little workstation, and they can run their own mixes as the show goes on. And they can, add a little bit of reverb, a little bit of short delay into that for vocals, so the vocals don't sound so dry, and it feels a little more natural. And then the other tail of the split snake goes to front of house to somebody like me that's going to use those inputs now in my console to run the house mix that the audience is addressed by. So that's, some of the stuff, some of the hurdles you got to kind of, overcome. If you will put the time in, if you'll spend the money and you'll put the time in, give it 6 gigs. That's what I always say. Give it 6 gigs, use it for 6 gigs, and see that it doesn't change your whole outlook on how you perform. Your ears are ringing less at the end of the night. Your mix, once you get through the first 2 or 3 shows, you'll start to get your mix dialed in if you're using a mixer on stage. And then now your monitor mix is exactly the same in every venue that you go in when you have that scenario. And that's hugely popular with guys now because they figured it out. Like, hey, this is how I solve so many problems from venue to venue is we have our own digital mixer on stage with a split snake. Our monitor mix is almost exactly the same as soon as we turn it on every venue we go in. The other benefit of that is if you're playing venues with, sound guys that aren't necessarily like, super awesome, guys that really know what they're doing, I can take a sound engineer right out of school or someone with minimal experience and put them on a rig where the band is mixing their own ears on stage, where all he has to worry about is the house mix, and he'll do pretty good. That really takes a lot of the stress off of him. Most young guys in this business really struggle to get wedges rung out correctly because they don't really do a great job of teaching that in school. And it's something you just got to kind of learn on the road. My interns, it's a thing that I harp on them the most. A lot of them roll their eyes at me because they're like, how much longer is wedges going to be around? Because everybody's going in here. Well, they're going to be around. I still know nationals that do ears and wedges, so it's not going anywhere. You need to learn how to hear frequency. When feedback happens, you need to know what frequency that is. That comes back to basic ear training 101, and when you take that out of the equation for a guy that's only making $75 a night to mix a room around the corner from where he lives at, then it makes a huge, huge difference in his comfortability, level that night at the gig. The band is comfortable because they have the same ear mix that they had at the last show, and it tends to really help the overall performance all the way around. I give discounts to bands. I have 2 price structures. I have a price structure with wedges and a price structure without wedges. Now, there's obviously a base fundamental price that I won't leave the shop for, but, the rest of that stuff builds on that price, on that base price, So there's another reason why you should be doing this. I regularly put these systems together for bands, and we'll go to their rehearsal and we'll help them get the mixer set up, train them how to use the app to run their mixer, and that sort of thing. It typically takes a band, depending on if everybody wants to go wireless, because I've seen some bands, not many, but I've seen some bands all go wired, like everybody's on wired ears. And in that scenario, you just need a set of buds and you need a $50 like P1 Behringer unit or a Rolls unit, to do your ears with. So that can save you a whole boatload of money. The wireless systems are anywhere between $700 and $3,000, depending on what you get. Usually I really like the Sennheiser ear units, the EW, what is it? I forget what the model number is. It's the G4s now. The fourth generation is what they're up to or whatever. But they're about $1,000, $1,200. Those units are bulletproof. You see them on the road pro touring all the time. I mean, I think they're really strong units. To get that same quality of stuff in Shure, you got to spend a little bit more money. And, they're probably a little bit better units, honestly, because I love Shure stuff. I don't get paid by any of those companies to endorse them. But so you figure $1,000 a person there. You're going to be $1,200, $1,300, $1,500 into a digital mixer, another $600, $700 into a split snake. You're going to need a rack to put all that together, some cabling. And some bands are even like using their own mic cables, stands, the whole nine, because when you use the same mics at every gig, your mix sounds even more consistent, because you're using the exact same mics at every gig. So some bands are doing that now. That's a great direction to go in if you can afford to do it. But, I think the last ear system I put together was about $5,000. That was for me to put it together, to me to order everything, get everything in, rack everything up. I can rack it up any way you want. I think the last band did 2 small racks instead of 1 big rolling rack. I like the 1 big rolling rack thing, but if you're the guy that's got to unload it by yourself, then, the 2 smaller racks may work better for you. But they did a wireless center mic, as well as, they're a 4-piece band, as well as 4 Sennheiser, wireless ear things. They bought their own buds, so that price didn't include the buds. And they are tickled pink now. They're using it every weekend. They play out 2-3 times a week, every week. And they're just rave about how it's the best thing that they have done, and they should have done it way sooner than what they did. I went to one of the rehearsals and set up their rig and actually got it dialed in and showed everybody how to use the app. I think they even had a buddy of mine that lives a little closer to them come a second time, maybe 6 months or 8 months later, and he kind of gave them a little more training, with the systems. But man, it is what all the serious bands are doing now. It is the wave of the future. It is where things are heading, and you really should consider moving in that direction. You really should consider going in-ear monitors. It greatly reduces stage volume, not having 4 or 5 wedges on stage at 100, 110 dB. So if you're a band that plays small to medium-sized rooms, in-ear monitors are going to be it's going to save your life in a lot of those rooms, because just the lack of stage volume. I'm finding a lot of guys are going direct. Once they go in-ear monitors, they end up, buying a Kemper guitar rig or a Helix or, some kind of really super cool, direct guitar rig. Bass players are basically just running through a Radial J48. You hear me harp about that all the time on the TikTok channel. And, they're all going direct. So, there's one band that I mix regularly who has done just that. And the only thing acoustic on stage is the drums. And it's strange because if you walk behind the band while they're playing, the only thing you can hear is drums. You can't hear vocals, you can't hear guitars, you can't hear bass. All that stuff is coming front of house. And everybody's in ears. It makes their setup way easier. The guitar players show up with a briefcase full of gear now and a couple guitars. Bass player shows up with a briefcase full of gear and his bass. That's it. And your sound guy is loving life because now he doesn't have to worry about any of the monitor mixes. He doesn't have to worry about the stage volume. I just did a gig yesterday where the band was on all wedges. It was an 8-piece horn band, and stage volume was just completely out of control. And then to add insult to injury, the lead singer was kind of a timid singer. So I had to really plow her channel with gain. And, there's nothing wrong with all that. That's how they do business, and I didn't have any problem making everything work. But, when you have a timid lead singer or someone that doesn't have a lot of volume or projection when they sing, then you got to crank that mic up to the point to where a proximity effect starts happening. And that means that now it's picking up everything else. And I was picking up the snare drum and the cymbals on the drum set as much as I was picking up her vocal. And that is just a bear for a guy to have to fight all night. Now, we did it. No problem. Everybody loved it. Everybody was happy. Crowd loved it, but I felt that the front of house felt a little boxy because there was so much vocal bleed or so much stage bleed in the vocal mics. And it's not an ideal situation. It really isn't. And they are on the verge of going in-ear. They're aware of all this stuff. I'm not talking smack about them or saying anything about them that they don't already know. They are in the process of buying the equipment and trying to move in that direction. Lead singers who fit into that scenario. Lead singers, if you're someone who is a timid singer or someone who just can't keep your pitch right pushing hard, I understand that. That's okay. You'd be surprised how many people are like that. There's no problem with that. You're not a bad singer because that's the case. You just need to put the correct equipment in place to help your mix, In-ear monitors is the first place to go. Make sure you're on the right microphone, that sort of thing. I like a Beta 58, Beta 87A, Sennheiser 945. Those are all really good mics that I prefer. I like the KSM 8, KSM 9, the Telefunken, the M80, I think is that one. Those are all killer mics for guys. SE Electronics V7, which really doesn't have as much mic gain as I would like, but it still rejects a lot of stage volume. Any of those mics are going to really help you out, and help fight some of that proximity effect, especially if you get into some of the more modern mics like the Telefunken, the SE Electronics, the 945 Sennheiser, the KSM mics. Those mics are really good at rejecting stage volume, and stuff like that, and not having a super crazy proximity effect. So in-ear monitors helps that whole situation. When you take those wedges off stage, if I could have took the wedges off stage yesterday, night and day difference in front of house. Night and day, without a question. Because now I'm not fighting all the stage volume bleed into the vocal mics. Especially with an 8-piece band with a percussion guy and a horn section and all that kind of stuff. And those guys were super cool, by the way. Loved working with them. I hope I get to work with them again. Great group of guys, and everything I'm saying about them is stuff we talked about at the gig yesterday. They're aware of all that stuff. So, I'm not pooping at anybody's Wheaties by sharing that. Super cool. The 8 Ohms Band is the name of the band. Go check them out. They're super, super tight band, man. Really, really good group of musicians there. But yeah, so that's kind of the rundown and why and how, all about in-ear monitors. If you're fighting it, and, I know guys that fight it, bass players specifically, typically fight this tooth and nail. They'll have arguments like, I can't feel my bass. They're used to standing in front of a 410 or an 810 cabinet where they can feel the air moving, on their legs and stuff like that. Give it time, guys. Give it time, because what you don't realize is that big bass amp is robbing a lot of your front of house mix, and it's bleeding through vocal mics as well, So the more you can, get things direct, the more you can get. And I say that I'm not anti-amp, okay? I'm anti-stage volume. Stage volume is the absolute enemy of a good front of house mix. That's what I'm getting at, guys. In-ear monitors gives you the ability to make a huge step in the right direction to get away from that stage volume. I know guys that show up with Marshall 412s and are 100% well-behaved. Got no problems with them whatsoever. They're pushing about, 80, 85, 90 dB at their amp. I got a mic in front of it. Everything works fine. Life is good. Some of those guys, I got some combo guys that show up with like a 212 combo or a 112 combo, orange, and they got a really cool, tube sound going on. And they'll put a little, 2-foot tall shield in front of their amp. So it's not projecting crazy at, the audience, and it gives us a little bit of isolation to be. They do that stuff in the studio all the time when they're recording, and it gives us a little bit of isolation, and it blocks that direct throw of the guitar amp into the vocal mics. So that's all stuff that, is going to make your band sound better. It's going to make you happier long term. Give it a chance. Give it 6 gigs. Buy the right gear the first time. Spend the money. I know it's hard to spend the money. Money's hard to come by from all of us. Believe me, I get it. But if you follow these steps and you do what I'm telling you to do, you will thank me in the long run. And your sound guy is going to thank you. Absolutely. I've had some guitar players complain that, well, I don't really get the tone that I like in my earbuds, but I understand that that tone is for the audience, not necessarily for me on stage. I'm willing to sacrifice some of that tone to be able to give the absolute best front of house mix that I can, because it's the audience that's paying the bills, the audience that shows up and pays the cover charge to get in and buys dinner and drinks alcohol all night. Those are the guys that are footing the bill for these bands. So, when you understand that, as long as you have reference and you can hear what you're playing and you can hear what the other guys are playing, it doesn't have to be horrible. And I'm not saying that it's horrible. The better in-ear system you buy, the better buds you buy, the better all that stuff's going to sound. You got to work it out. There's definitely a learning curve. But if you do this stuff, I'm telling you, you'll thank me in the long run. You'll be glad that you did it. Your sound guy will be glad. Your house mix will get better. Your fans will start coming to you saying, wow, man, I don't know what you guys have done different, but you guys sound so good now. Like the front of house mix is just on. And it's because you removed that whole stage volume scenario from the equation. And when you do that, hey, man, it's great. I'm a middle market guy. This whole video is about middle market venues, clubs to county fairs. When you're outside and you're in a stadium or you're in a big place, hey, man, all bets are off. You can turn up. You can do whatever you want to do at that point. If you're on a stage that's, 30 feet deep and 60 feet wide, hey, you got plenty of room to get loud, But let's face it, probably 95 or 7% of the bands that are playing live music this weekend are playing in clubs, under 1,500 or 1,000 people. That's just the middle market. We are the live music scene that drives this nation. We are the live music scene that you will go see weekend after weekend after weekend, at all your favorite clubs and, when you're on vacation at all the beach clubs and stuff like that. So that's the market where in-ear monitors is really going to do you the best, good. That's where you're really going to see the biggest changes in how your band sounds overall. Thanks, guys. Grumpy Sound Guy. See you next time.